Don't focus on your competitors' headlines, okay? This is something that's very, very important for entrepreneurs, okay? It's something that took me 2 years to connect with one of the competitors I've been monitoring in the field, in the business world, and finally connected the dots recently, literally this month. And that's why I was very compelled to make this video, right? Learn from experience, and then I share it. And on this Entrepreneur Vault 100 episode, I really wanted to dive deep into why you should not really focus on your competitors' headlines. And before I even go there, I'm gonna break down the first three type of headlines your competitor usually has. And the first one is usually their fundraise. They've raised money, right, from either angel investors or a venture capital, okay? And usually this kind of puts entrepreneurs down a little bit because they feel like, hey, my competitor just raised millions of dollars. I have not raised any money. Barely do I even have enough money to keep pushing the company the way I want to do it. And I'll talk about why this is a good or bad thing, okay? I'll talk about that later when we break down the different sections, right? And the next one is usually XX company is disrupting X ABCD space, okay? So this is usually something that kind of catches your eye because you're like, whoa, they're getting claims that they're disrupting the market while we're not even getting any titles, we're not getting any headlines about us disrupting a market. So this is something that can discourage a lot of entrepreneurs. It can feel like your competitor is doing better than you, but headlines don't usually tell the whole story, and we'll talk about that later just here in a second. And the final one is usually something like awards, right? Your competitor has won ABCD award for ABCD 1, 2, 3, whatever it might be. And you might feel like, hey, we have not won any awards. It feels like we haven't put the work in, and you start discouraging yourself. And in general, all these different headlines, what they usually do, if you don't actually get down to the numbers and what we'll talk about here in a second, I know I keep saying here in a second, because I really want to build up towards that so you can be able to analyze the entire scope, okay? And it's a very, very important thing. That's why I really want you to get this kind of foundation part down. And the foundation part is this. A lot of people, even me, myself, I'm talking from my own personal experience. When I see my competitors getting a headline, it discourages me. I feel like, oh my gosh, they're putting numbers on the board. They're getting featured on Forbes 30 under 30 list in Africa. They're getting in the articles in TechCrunch. They're getting all this different attention. The dude is doing an interview on TV. The CEO of that company, who's a competitor to me, is having an interview on, all these different things keep running through your head, and you feel like, hey, I'm not hustling enough, or maybe my business is not quite there. The competitor is doing much better than I'm doing. And usually that's not the whole story, guys. It's really not. And that's why focusing on those headlines will actually end up making you actually become at a disadvantage instead of you actually having an advantage when a competitor is putting himself out there. Because here's the deal. Here on the number one, right? Just because a company, your competitors raised money, does not mean they're good, okay? Usually, if a competitor is raising money, especially multiple rounds, multiple seeds, that means they have not made profits or they have not quite figured it out for them to be able to scale using their own profits, their own revenue. And of course, there's different scenarios where if their company is actually already making profit, they're more than breaking even, and they're raising money to accelerate growth, then that's a different story. That's a different tale. But if a company is raising money to get started, does not necessarily mean they have a competitive advantage. Just because you have a lot of money behind you does not mean you're gonna survive in the market. Wanna know why? Because one of the competitors I have, they're called AfroStream. They raised a series of about $4 million, including from Y Combinator. Y Combinator, a large VC from the United States and California, well respected in the market. They raised a lot of money. They have a lot of angel investors and VCs that are very respected in the tech space, but 2 years later, they shut down. Let me repeat that. There were big headlines that were discouraging me at that moment. My competitor is raising money, they're getting good venture capitals backing them, and I'm panicking a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have not raised dollars, and it just doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna survive, okay? They were not able to become profitable. And here's the thing here, guys. When your competitor raises money, there's a couple of things that are gonna happen here. Number one, they have a ticking time bomb. That is a fact. When investors put money in the company, they're expecting to start making money at a certain point. And if they don't start making money at a certain point and they don't see the company actually fighting through it, they're gonna pull out. And when investors' money pulls out and you have overhead costs of $50,000 a month, you don't have the money to support that, guess what happens? You shut down. So, just because your competitor has a headline, they've raised money, don't all of a sudden think they're gonna be able to win in the game. Money is not everything, okay? Money is not everything. It's actually how you, if you're not able to make profits right now, what do you think because someone throws $100 million in your business, you're gonna make money? It doesn't necessarily work that way. So that's a big thing you need to understand there. And the other one is disrupting, right? You feel like your competitor is getting headlines, they're disrupting the space, the first African company to do this, the first blah, 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 all these different headlines, and you feel like, oh my gosh, we're not quite there. Someone is claiming titles out there, you know, they're getting those medals and we've got nothing, right? So here's the thing here, guys. Just because someone is first to market, just because someone is claiming they're disrupting a market, does not mean they will be the ones who actually lead in that market. The business world has shown that to us multiple times over and over. The biggest one, Facebook and MySpace, right? The classic ones, right? MySpace was out first. They were the ones who were getting all the chains, all those, not chains, but awards, or basically claims that they're the ones who are gonna lead the social media space. So guess what ended up happening? Mark Zuckerberg was very patient. He figured out his business model. He figured out how to scale it. And he was the one who won, right? MySpace is still there, but Facebook is kind of a giant compared to what MySpace is at right now. So don't let the disruptive articles, the first to market articles, derail you from what you're working on. Just because someone is out there first does not mean they'll be the best in the market, okay? And the final one is awards. It kind of goes with the last one we just talked about right now, but when it comes to awards, you know, there's different awards out there, especially in developing countries like India and different countries in Africa that are developing currently. And you hear articles like the best app startup in Africa, or the best startup of 2018 from Africa. Just because they're getting claimed to the best in that title, that award, does not mean they've actually done the business, the numbers in business, right? The things that matter in business, right? Make a product, make sales, impact the market, change lives, move forward, grow, scale, conquer the market. That is just business right there. So just because a company is getting awards does not mean they're actually fully doing that, they're executing at that level. Because here's the thing, guys. In the business world, this is the thing I don't like sometimes in the business world. Sometimes companies get titles and they get claims and they're actually not pushing the way they should be pushing. And of course, the competitor is not gonna come out and be like, oh guys, please slow down. I know we're getting these claims, we're actually kind of losing money right now, or we actually don't have a product, or we actually have no idea what's about to happen next. No one's about to be coming out smiling like this and telling you that. No, they're gonna just tell you we're doing big things, and in your head you're like, oh, they're doing big things, but that's not actually what's happening. And I'm not here putting a blanket on all headlines. I'm just saying for most of the headlines you see for tech startups, they usually go like that, because here's the thing. Let me just give you homework for a second before I even go further. Just go look back for the companies that had big headlines in 2012. Okay, 2012 in Africa. Go look at the big companies that had big headlines in Africa, or even the United States, in Europe, in China. Just go do homework around there. Then look at the big companies that had big headlines in 2016, 2015. And then let me ask you this question. Where are they now? Yeah, where are they now? All right? Just because a company has big headlines does not mean they're gonna survive, okay? And I'm not here getting all kind of puffed up. I'm just giving you the facts. Chance of a company surviving, just because you had a headline in Forbes list does not mean that your company's gonna survive. Just because you raised money, right? There's a lot of companies that have raised money. Matter of fact, this company that raised $200 million, $148 million in the United States, and they went under. They just, not a word from them anymore. And this is why it's very important for you not to focus on those headlines. It's very important for you to actually get straight to your business. And here's the tip. When it comes to headlines, this is what you want to do. Here's you, here's your competitor. Usually, you're looking at it from this perspective. Don't do that. Because when you're looking from this perspective, right, you're kind of looking at, that's my competitor, they're getting headlines, and we're here. And you don't know what's happening. You don't actually know what's happening in those headlines. Here's what you need to do. Here's you, here's competitor, here's your mindset, and your mindset needs to be as an investor. When you're an investor mindset, now you can be able to balance it. You're able to look at the numbers, you're like, okay, this guy is claiming they're disrupting the market. And this is you, nobody really knows about you. Okay, you see what I'm saying here? As an investor, you don't care about who's getting the big headlines on articles. Yeah, sure, it does give them some social proof. Yeah, sure, it does give them some, puffed up energy to keep pushing them, but if this company is actually making profits, It's bringing in the numbers. It's scaling, it's growing without even investors. You rather invest in this company because they know what they're doing and they have a better chance of surviving the market. This is you right here. And if you don't look at it from an investor perspective, you're like, okay, how many customers do you have? Oh, you don't have any customers. Okay. Do you have a minimal viable product? You don't have one yet. Okay. Do you have the people to even build the product? Oh, okay. You've never built the product before? Oh, okay. So those big claims are not really making sense anymore. Think about it this way. If you read an article of an athlete, right? A sports player, a sports basketball, let's use basketball for example, and you see a big headline, Johnny Doe is gonna be the next best basketball player out there. And you're like, whoa, those are some claims. And then you look at the numbers, you're like, this dude has never played actually with the big league players out there. He's not actually putting any numbers, but if you see an article like LeBron James, one of the best basketball players who ever lived, you're like, yeah, that's fact. He's got the numbers to back it. He's still out there crushing it. He's got the rings. He's got the, like, you know what I mean? He actually has the numbers to prove them. And it's the same thing with business right here. Don't let the headlines fool you. Don't let the headlines derail you. Make sure you know what the headlines are actually talking about. And I'm not here trying to dumb down or trying to say headlines are bad. I'm just saying from the perspective of a competitor to competitor in business. Don't let your competitor's headlines fool you. Just break down the numbers and see what's happening. And when you break down the numbers, the beautiful thing is it's a win-win situation. Even if your competitor, you actually find out your competitor, those headlines they're claiming are actually very factual because they're putting the numbers behind them, that's a good thing because you're able to be like, okay, so this is what the competitor is doing, this is how many customers they have, this is the app they've built, we can test it out, we can see how it's doing. Or maybe you can find out, whoa, wait a minute, they're claiming all those different headlines, but they're not actually doing a lot of things, they actually don't have a product, they don't have any customers, they're just getting started. And you might be ahead of them, you might be where they're starting, and you might be a little bit behind, but you know you're able to gauge it based on numbers, based on actual competitive numbers. You're able to actually put the competitive advantage and disadvantages based on facts and based on numbers, not based on headlines, okay? This is the Entrepreneur Vault 100 right here, and this is a very, very important topic, I believe, one of the most important topics I've talked about here in 2018 and 2017. Don't let the headlines distract you. Focus and hustle and keep pushing forward. All right, keep it 100. That's what you're supposed to do. So when you see headlines, keep it 100, break down the numbers and add them up. If it doesn't add up to 100, something is missing, something is fishy, right? But if it adds up to 100, know all those numbers that added up to 100, right? I think that kind of makes sense right there. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace out and keep hustling and keep pushing. Yeah, keep it 100.